Picture Ronald McDonald walking into a boardroom in 2025 holding not fries, but a spreadsheet. On it, proof that McDonald's still serves 69 million people every single day. The clown empire keeps its crown while facing pressures like rising food costs, the push for healthier options, delivery challenges, and rivals chasing plant-based trends. So how did this brand survive everything from inflation to menu disasters to pandemic shortages through the 1990s and into the 2020s? Today we're breaking down McDonald's biggest victories, biggest failures, and strangest experiments. And one of the strangest cost nearly $300 million to flop. The $300 million burger blunder. McDonald's once tried to reinvent itself with a single product, the so-called burger for grown-ups. In 1996, the company launched the Deluxe, a bold play aimed at convincing adults that McDonald's was more than Happy Meals and bright playgrounds. The price tag of the project? Around $300 million, a figure that made it one of the costliest menu experiments in fast food history. Executives believed this one sandwich could overhaul the brand's image and carve out a new, more sophisticated reputation. The Deluxe itself wasn't outrageous on paper. It was built on a quarter-pound beef patty stacked with lettuce, tomato, cheese, onions, ketchup, peppered bacon, and a special mustard mayo sauce. McDonald's even brought in a fine dining chef from Chicago, Andrew Salvaggio, to develop the taste, refining every detail from the spice mix for the bacon to the exact balance of mustard flavor. What the company wanted to sell wasn't just a hamburger. It was the idea that McDonald's could mature alongside its customers. Adults who grew up with Ronald and Happy Meals were now being invited to order something with grown-up taste. To push that message, McDonald's poured staggering sums into marketing. Reportedly, rough estimates ranged from $150 to $200 million, making it one of the largest single advertising campaigns the chain had ever attempted. But the commercials and promotions landed awkwardly. In one ad, children grimaced at the burger, declaring it unfit for kids, meant as a compliment to adults. Another featured Ronald McDonald stepping onto a stage in business attire instead of his clown suit, framed like he was at a corporate product launch. These attempts were supposed to signal sophistication. Instead, they felt jarring and out of place, leaving audiences puzzled about how they were supposed to react. Customers didn't embrace the message either. Adults weren't looking for fine dining from a drive-thru, and parents didn't want to be told their regular orders were somehow childish. To them, McDonald's strength was value, speed, and consistency, not reinvented luxury. The campaign's insistence on elevating the brand only highlighted how mismatched the product was to its environment. People tried the Deluxe out of curiosity, but few came back to order it again. The financial expectations couldn't have been higher. McDonald's projected potential sales of over $1 billion per year from the Deluxe, but reality looked nothing like those forecasts. Franchisees grew frustrated, pointing out that the additional ingredients complicated operations, training was required for staff, and the return on that investment never materialized. Within just a few years, sales slowed to the point where the burger was phased out, officially gone by 2000. Behind the failure was a simple miscalculation. McDonald's believed it could pivot into the realm of sophisticated dining without losing its core identity, but customers had never asked for that pivot. Most people still came through the doors or drive-thrus expecting affordable food, fast service, and familiarity. By trying to compete with higher-end burger restaurants under the same golden arches, McDonald's undermined the very qualities that set it apart. The commercials and rollout worked against those qualities too. The imagery of kids rejecting the sandwich may have been meant as flattery to adults, but it only reinforced the awkwardness. Why lean on Ronald McDonald to signal seriousness when his brand had always been tied to children? Instead of broadening its reach, the advertising whittled down the audience and confused everyone watching. Consumers laughed at the odd framing, franchisees bristled at the mixed messaging, and shareholders saw the campaign's record-setting budget miss its target. By the numbers, it was devastating. That $300 million investment, once adjusted for inflation, equates to nearly $500 million in today's terms. Television ad buys, billboards, packaging redesigns, ingredient sourcing, staff training, and global rollouts all swallowed up resources that could have gone into better received ideas. The Deluxe wasn't just a flop. It was a black hole for time, money, and morale. Internally, leadership had to defend the launch in memos and meetings as critics questioned the strategy. The product revealed tension between McDonald's headquarters and its franchise network, many of whom resisted the steep rollout costs for a burger they didn't believe in. That defensive scramble confirmed just how far the project had drifted from the realities of the stores themselves. For a company designed around consistency, the Arch Deluxe was chaotic in every sense. The story didn't completely end there. McDonald's briefly revisited the idea in 2018 with a new version called the Arch Burger, pitched at a lower price point and without the massive campaign. But once again, it failed to stay on menus, vanishing after only limited tests. The market had already moved on, and the name itself had become synonymous with failure. The deeper irony was that McDonald's never had to make the shift toward gourmet to thrive. Customers weren't demanding upscale burgers, they wanted reliable ones. Competitors like Wendy's and Burger King chipped away at McDonald's, not by chasing a mature image, but by introducing novelty, value menus, and quirky ad campaigns that better matched their audiences. McDonald's eventually returned to those fundamentals itself, doubling down on breakfast, doubling down on family-friendly marketing, and reinforcing its signature menu items as cultural staples. For many inside and outside the company, the Arch Deluxe became a cautionary tale. The phrase, "we don't need another Arch Deluxe," was sometimes used to push back against risky or over-engineered new product pitches. In hindsight, executives admitted the problem wasn't that they created a new burger. The problem was they tried to sell an identity that their customers never sought from them in the first place. Stripped down, the lesson couldn't be clearer. McDonald's spent hundreds of millions to look grown up, and in the process, forgot what its audience valued most: familiarity and affordability. That gap between ambition and reality is why the Arch Deluxe is remembered today not as a great menu experiment, but as one of the most expensive flops in fast food. And while this grand misstep left executives licking their wounds, the company wasn't finished finding ways to build stronger connections with its customers. Because if one attempt at winning adults had collapsed spectacularly, another strategy, this time with kids, would prove to be one of McDonald's most enduring successes. The Happy Meal effect. Was the Happy Meal the greatest marketing trick ever pulled on parents? That cardboard box with a small burger, a few fries, and a prize inside didn't just sell lunch, it sold childhood. What looked like an ordinary combo meal became one of the strongest loyalty engines in fast food history. Parents thought they were buying something quick for their kids. What they were actually purchasing was an experience their children would ask for again and again. In many ways, the Happy Meal grew into more than food. It was an early invitation into a lifestyle built around the golden arches. The origin story started in the 1970s, not inside the corporate offices, but with franchisees who recognized a gap in how families ordered. At that time, kids often split food off their parents' plates or were forced into oversized adult meals that went unfinished. It wasn't cost-effective for parents, and it wasn't exciting for kids. The franchise concept pushed forward by Yolanda Fernandez de Cafino in Guatemala was later adapted in the U.S. by Kansas City ad man Bob Bernstein, who designed the cereal box-style packaging, colorful graphics, and the idea of tucking in a toy. McDonald's rolled it out nationally by 1979, and within a few short years, the Happy Meal had anchored itself in American family life. Looking back, it feels inevitable, but at the time, it was a sharp pivot that almost no competitor had considered. From the very beginning, the food was only half the formula. The real hook was the toy. A cheeseburger or nuggets no longer stood on their own, they came wrapped in expectation. The simple act of unboxing something new transformed eating into a ritual. McDonald's quickly linked these toys to cultural moments. In the early 1980s, licensing tie-ins introduced Playmobil figurines. The promotion was wildly popular but abruptly recalled due to choking hazards, a controversy that showed just how fast demand could spiral. A decade later, in 1997, the teeny Beanie Babies craze gripped customers in a frenzy, with parents lining up before breakfast to secure them, Happy Meals selling out, and even delivery trucks being swarmed. Those moments proved the power of attaching toys to a meal. The anticipation itself could drive crowds into stores. That small cardboard box achieved something few other marketing campaigns accomplished. It turned visiting a fast food restaurant into a repeating social ceremony. Many kids weren't focused on fries or soda, they were focused on not missing out. In playgrounds and classrooms, toys became a kind of social currency. Friends compared collections, swapped duplicates, and pressured each other to keep up with the latest releases. Saying no to a Happy Meal wasn't about denying food, it was about denying participation in a shared cultural event. For parents, this dynamic made resisting nearly impossible. The Happy Meal insinuated itself into family routines with remarkable efficiency. Trips to McDonald's became expected rewards, after school, after sports, on weekends, and each trip brought kids closer to the brand's orbit. The strategy scaled in ways even McDonald's might not have foreseen. Those boxes started appearing at birthday parties, on family road trips, and on vacations across the globe. Advertising reinforced the story with commercials that framed Happy Meals not as fast food, but as family moments worth treasuring. The result was enormous. By the 1990s, the Happy Meal was such a key part of operations that nearly 1 out of every 5 customer visits included a purchase. For one menu product to carry that kind of weight showed how successfully McDonald's had linked it to everyday family life. Today, the scale is almost unimaginable. Over 1 billion Happy Meals are sold worldwide every year. That's not just brand penetration, that's cultural saturation. Still, the very traits that made the Happy Meal successful also brought criticism. Advocacy groups and some legislators accused McDonald's of targeting children too aggressively, of encouraging unhealthy eating habits, and of adding plastic waste to landfills. McDonald's did feel the heat, but instead of shelving the concept, it sought to adapt. Over time, the company shrank fry sizes, removed soda as the default drink, added fruit slices to the menu, and made milk or water easier options. On the toys side, the chain pledged a dramatic reduction in fossil fuel-based plastics, promising to cut their usage by 90% company-wide by 2025. In many markets, plastic figurines gave way to foldable 3D paper crafts or toys made from recycled materials. These shifts didn't change the core appeal of the Happy Meal. The surprise remained, only the packaging adjusted to new values. Those changes subtly reframed the Happy Meal as more than just a remnant of the late 20th century. Parents who experienced the era of Hot Wheels or Lion King figurines were now raising their own kids in a world where environmental concerns were part of everyday conversation. By evolving the material without erasing the ritual, McDonald's demonstrated how a brand can respond to criticism while still preserving its strongest marketing asset. In practice, most children were unconcerned whether their toy was plastic or paper. The important thing was that it existed. Nostalgia still carried the rest. The Happy Meal wasn't just effective in the US, it became a global language of childhood. A child in Brazil, Japan, or the UK could open the same red box and find a toy linked to the same animated film or cartoon series. That shared experience functioned like a cultural thread running through entire generations. Unlike television shows or games that varied across borders, the McDonald's Happy Meal offered remarkable consistency. It let different parts of the world tap into identical cultural beats, one small figurine at a time. In that way, the appeal extended beyond food marketing into something closer to a phenomenon of global childhood. Even from a business standpoint, the Happy Meal solved a stubborn problem, swaying a family's ultimate decision-maker. Parents asserting we're going to this restaurant often had to reckon with child lobbying. The Happy Meal gave children a unique lever, one no other fast food brand matched with equal force. Over time, competing chains attempted copycat versions, combining small portions and cheap toys, but they never reached the same scale or consistency. McDonald's had already staked its territory as the kid-friendly choice. And once that association took root in parents' minds, it was hard to dislodge. Another overlooked part of its impact is how the Happy Meal quietly laid down a foundation for long-term brand attachment. While executives in the 1990s chased adults with failed pivots like the Arch Deluxe, they didn't need to engineer loyalty for grown-ups. By the time kids who grew up with Happy Meals became teens or adults, many already carried nostalgia and positive memories of McDonald's. That loyalty became a built-in advantage, showing up years later in spending habits. A childhood tradition had become an adult habit. The criticisms, lawsuits, and regulatory challenges remain part of the Happy Meal's history, but they haven't derailed its momentum. If anything, moments of controversy only reinforced its visibility. When headlines questioned plastic waste or food marketing, those stories reminded everyone that the Happy Meal was still very much in circulation. With sales consistently topping 1 billion units a year, it has proven itself not just as a menu option, but as a cultural artifact, an object that signifies more than what's inside the box. For families, it is often seen as a rite of passage. For McDonald's, it is a cornerstone of global branding. Whether considered clever marketing aimed at parents or accidental genius born of a franchisee's idea, the Happy Meal stands unmatched in its ability to pull children into the orbit of the Golden Arches. Nearly 5 decades since its debut, no single promotion has influenced how families interact with fast food in quite the same way. For McDonald's, it was less a gimmick than a blueprint for converting generations into repeat customers. But the Happy Meal's success raises an interesting contrast. Some menu experiments thrive because they become routine, woven into daily life with consistency and predictability. Others succeed for a completely different reason, not because they are constant, but because they are fleeting. And in the McDonald's playbook, one sandwich became the masterclass in that opposite approach. The cult of the McRib. Why do people chase a sandwich that vanishes almost as quickly as it appears? For decades, few fast food items have sparked the same obsession as the McRib. It is not a permanent menu option, and its return never follows a tidy calendar. Yet whenever it comes back, customers swarm restaurants as if it were a seasonal holiday. They post pictures, share sightings online, and sometimes even drive across states just to get one. What began as an odd pork sandwich became something closer to an annual tradition, fueled by scarcity and ritual. The story starts in 1981. McDonald's wanted to expand beyond beef and chicken, so they experimented with pork. Food scientist Roger Mandigo had developed a process called restructured meat, which allowed cheaper cuts and trimmings to be pressed into uniform patties. Chef Rene Arend, who also invented McDonald's original dipping sauces, took that innovation and shaped it into the McRib, a boneless pork patty molded to look like a rack of ribs, topped with pickles and onions, slathered in barbecue sauce, and placed inside a sesame seed bun. At the time, this was unlike anything else on a fast food menu. The design was practical, strange, and instantly memorable. The launch, however, did not bring in the numbers company leaders expected. Many customers were skeptical of this faux rib patty, and sales fell short of keeping it permanent. By the mid-1980s, the McRib was pulled from menus entirely. But instead of being forgotten like other failed experiments, it slowly found a second life. Beginning in the 1990s, McDonald's reintroduced it as a limited-time offer. That change transformed how people saw it. Scarcity became the hook. By showing up occasionally, the McRib encouraged fans to buy it right away, out of fear it might disappear again for years. From there, McDonald's leaned into unpredictability. The company never standardized when or where the sandwich would return. Some years it was nationwide, other years it appeared only in select markets, and sometimes it skipped a year altogether. The inconsistency drove fans to keep looking. Informal networks popped up online, where people reported McRib sightings like rare birdwatchers documenting migratory patterns. Whole websites and mobile apps were dedicated to tracking where the sandwich had landed next. What started as a menu item had grown into a fan culture of dedicated hunters, united by the thrill of chasing it down. Theories about why the sandwich disappeared and resurfaced fueled its legend further. Many suspected that pork commodity prices dictated its return. When costs for pork trimmings dipped, McDonald's could profitably roll out the McRib. When they rose, the sandwich would vanish. Though the company insisted that scarcity was primarily a deliberate marketing move, the timing often lined up closely with pork markets. So closely that some analysts even noted McRib launches, causing brief spikes in hog futures. For fans, this reinforced the idea that there was more going on than just a limited-time strategy. The McRib became a conspiracy theory you could eat. Not every explanation was economic. Others argued that the McRib reappeared strategically during slower sales quarters, giving franchisees a seasonal sales jolt. To casual customers, it didn't matter. The product's inconsistency fed its mystique. Unlike the Big Mac or Chicken McNuggets, which anyone could buy year-round, the McRib felt elusive. For some people, its flavor didn't even matter. The appeal was being part of the event, yet another person able to post, "It's back," the moment it hit stores. By the 2000s, this phenomenon became self-sustaining. Regional launches received coverage in local newspapers and television broadcasts, as though it were a civic announcement. When social media platforms exploded, the McRib adapted perfectly to online hype cycles. Hashtags tracked its reappearance. Viral TikToks critiqued its taste. Petitions gathered thousands of names demanding it become permanent. McDonald's hardly needed to buy ads anymore. The excitement promoted itself. The McRib had turned into a cultural spectacle, as much as a menu item. For a product that critics often mocked as mediocre, its staying power was remarkable. Customers joked about the strange shape and processed texture, yet they still took part in the tradition. The taste was rarely the main draw. What mattered was the cycle of absence and return. Each disappearance built anticipation for the next comeback. Each comeback provided a burst of relevance for McDonald's that no year-round item could match. Over time, the company also faced bigger questions related to sourcing and ethics. By the early 2010s, animal welfare groups were taking aim at pork suppliers who used controversial confinement practices. Because McDonald's bought enormous quantities of pork each year, over 250 million pounds, its decisions carried weight. In 2012, the company pledged to phase out suppliers who relied on gestation crate. While the McRib itself wasn't the only factor, its popularity made pork sourcing a clear public issue. McDonald's reframed the sandwich as compatible with modern values by highlighting these shifts. Though critics called this greenwashing, the company understood that even cult items had to evolve to match consumer expectation. Yet through all the adjustments and public debates, the biggest driver of the McRib's mystique remained the same: scarcity. Fans still called for it to be made permanent, but McDonald's resisted. Permanence would flatten the hype. It would turn something extraordinary into background noise. By keeping it confined to bursts of availability, the company ensured constant rediscovery. McDonald's transformed the McRib into an annual ritual, not an everyday meal. The psychology behind this choice is widely backed by behavioral studies. People consistently assign higher value to what seems rare or fleeting. Artificial scarcity creates urgency, which drives purchases now instead of later. The McRib is proof of this principle in action. Even those who poke fun at its taste buy into the cycle because participation itself is the reward. Eating one is as much about being part of the conversation as it is about enjoying barbecue pork. At its core, the McRib shifted from food to cultural marker. Its odd shape, inconsistent appearances, and conspiracy-laden reputation made it unique in the world of fast food. People who might never order a filet-o-fish or a McChicken felt compelled to try a McRib, if only so they could say they did before it vanished. That cycle of curiosity built one of McDonald's strangest triumphs, not the chain's most profitable item, but arguably its most mythologized. The sandwich's odd status also underscored a paradox for McDonald's. While some menu items succeed through permanent familiarity, others thrive precisely because they are temporary. The McRib represented one side of that strategy. It showed how scarcity could build devotion where conventional marketing never could. But in other parts of the business, what McDonald's needed was the exact opposite: consistency, routine, and a dependable product to anchor daily decisions. And it was in another category entirely, one centered on morning habits, that McDonald's found a formula not built on absence, but on ubiquity. McDonald's secret weapon, breakfast. In the US, mornings quietly became one of McDonald's strongest battlegrounds. Today, breakfast is more than just an add-on for the chain. It represents roughly a third of its domestic business. That level of dominance did not come naturally. In the early 1970s, McDonald's wasn't even open for the morning crowd. No eggs, no coffee for commuters, no rush of school drop-offs pulling through the drive-thru. It took one franchisee, Herb Peterson in Santa Barbara, to ask a simple question: why not give customers a fast food version of breakfast? Peterson worked on his idea in 1971. Drawing inspiration from Eggs Benedict, he wanted a sandwich that felt familiar but could move across a counter in under a minute. To make it work, he needed consistency, every egg the same size and shape no matter who cooked it. The solution was his custom egg ring, basically a small metal mold for the griddle. That little invention unlocked the entire idea. The finished product, an English muffin stacked with a perfectly round egg, Canadian bacon, and cheese, was simple but transformative. McDonald's introduced the Egg McMuffin in 1972, and by 1977, the company had committed to a full breakfast menu on a national scale. That launch marked a turning point not only for McDonald's, but for the fast food industry as a whole. Before then, eating breakfast out usually meant a diner or a sit-down restaurant. Now you could get eggs, pancakes, or a sandwich on the way to work without leaving your car. Within just 4 years, breakfast grew to nearly 18% of McDonald's sales. By the late 1980s, it climbed to 25%, and competitors scrambled to copy the model. Burger King introduced the croissant-wich. Convenience stores leaned into prepackaged grab-and-go options. But McDonald's had what everyone else wanted: habit. It wasn't just selling food, it was attaching itself to the rhythms of school mornings, office commutes, and family weekends. The strategy gave McDonald's something invaluable: a new stream of revenue that didn't depend on lunch or dinner traffic. That meant when burger competition heated up in the 80s and 90s, breakfast kept the company steady. Customers who made McDonald's part of their morning often returned later in the day. The Egg McMuffin became an anchor, joined along the way by hash browns, sausage biscuits, hotcakes, and eventually newer spins like McGriddles. The details mattered less than the pattern. Millions of people repeating the same stop every single morning. But breakfast didn't just serve customers. It shaped how the company adapted in tougher times. One of the clearest examples came in 2014 when McDonald's finally responded to years of customer requests and launched all-day breakfast nationwide in the U.S. For decades, executives had argued it was impossible to serve eggs and burgers side by side, but the demand never faded. When the rollout hit, diners showed up in droves for afternoon McMuffins and midnight hotcakes. Sales jumped, and it looked like a masterstroke. Yet running two menus simultaneously quickly tangled operations. Staff had to juggle raw eggs with burger patties, grills slowed, and franchisees balked at the complexity. By 2020, during the pandemic, all-day breakfast was rolled back completely.